A confession. Written on the first day of November 1889. My wife is in the wall, and every winter I hear her breathing. Let me state this clearly before you dismiss me as mad. Before you close this document in horror and disbelief, my wife Eleanor has been sealed inside the wall of our bedroom for 20 years. Alive when I bricked her in, conscious, aware, screaming for 3 days before the screaming stopped and the breathing began. I am not insane. I am not delusional. I know the difference between imagination and reality, between guilt-induced hallucination and actual phenomenon. And I tell you with absolute certainty, Eleanor breathes behind that wall, has been breathing for 20 years. Every November when the house settles in the cold, when the old wood contracts and the stones shift, I hear it, the slow, patient rhythm of someone who has learned to wait. And this November, this 20th winter, the breathing has words in it, not voice. She has no throat left for voice, no moisture for speech, no tongue that could form sounds. But the pattern of breath creates meaning. The inhalation and exhalation form a rhythm that my mind interprets as language. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Over and over, each night growing louder, growing clearer. And I finally understand what I've been too terrified to accept for 20 years. Eleanor is grateful. She wanted this, orchestrated this, manipulated me into sealing her into that wall because it was the only way she could achieve whatever transformation she has been undergoing in the darkness. The wall is crumbling. I have repaired the mortar 17 times over 20 years, but each winter it crumbles faster, the bricks shift, the gaps widen. And I know with terrible certainty that this November the wall will break, Eleanor will emerge, and I will finally see what 20 years of living burial has created, what 20 years of breathing in darkness has transformed her into. My name is Marcus Ashcroft. I am 58 years old. I live alone in the house where Eleanor died, where I killed her, though not in the way you think, not with the intention I carried out. I am a solicitor, respected, successful, a man of standing in our real community. No one suspects what I did. No one knows what lives behind the wall in my bedroom. No one knows that every night for 20 years I have slept 3 feet from my wife's tomb, listening to her breathe, wondering when she would finally stop, praying she would stop, terrified that she might, but she never stopped. And now I understand why. Let me tell you what happened 20 years ago. Let me explain how Eleanor came to be in that wall. Let me make you understand that this was not madness, not murder, not even accident, but something else entirely. Something Eleanor planned, something she wanted, something she has been completing breath by breath, year by year, in the absolute darkness behind 6 inches of brick and mortar. Welcome to Fright Club. Here we honour the old masters, Poe, Jackson, the writers who knew that the deepest horror comes from within. We craft tales in their tradition, psychological, visceral, unflinching. Subscribe for more Gothic horror. Comment where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you how I sealed my wife in the wall. November 1st, 1869, our 5th wedding anniversary. Eleanor was 32 years old. I was 38. We had been happy, or so I believed. Our marriage was comfortable if not passionate, companionable if not deeply romantic. We shared a house, a life, a routine that satisfied us both, or so I believed. That evening, Eleanor asked me to meet her in the bedroom after dinner. Something in her voice made me uneasy, a formality, a distance, as though she were speaking to a business associate rather than her husband. I found her standing before the east wall of our bedroom, the wall opposite the bed, the wall that had been part of the original house built in 1783. thick stone covered with plaster and wallpaper that showed its age in yellowed patches and faded flowers. "Marcus," she said without turning, "I need you to do something for me, something you will not understand, something you will resist, but something I require nonetheless." "What is it?" She turned then, looked at me with eyes that held something I had never seen before. Certainty, absolute conviction, the look of someone who has made an irrevocable decision and will not be deterred. "I need you to seal me in this wall." I laughed. The request was so absurd I assumed she was joking, making some strange reference I did not understand. But Eleanor did not laugh, did not smile. She stared at me with those certain eyes and waited for my laughter to die. "Eleanor, what are you talking about?" "The wall. Behind me. I need to go inside it. And I need you to brick me in. Seal me completely. Leave no opening, no gap, no way out." That's insane. You can't be serious." "I am entirely serious. I've been planning this for 2 years. The wall is prepared. There is a space behind the plaster. An old priest hole from when Catholics hid in these houses. I have been provisioning it. Food, water, candles, everything I need." "Need for what?" "Eleanor, you're frightening me. What are you talking about?" She moved closer, took my hands in hers. Her skin was cold despite the fire burning in the hearth. "I am dying, Marcus. Have been dying for 3 years. The doctors cannot name it, cannot treat it. But I feel it. Something growing inside me, something that should not be there, something that will kill me slowly and painfully unless I find another way." "What way? What are you saying?" "The darkness, the confinement, the silence. I have been researching, reading accounts of anchorites and mystics, people who sealed themselves in tombs and emerged transformed, changed, healed of what ailed them by spending time in the space between life and death. Those are religious myths, superstition. You can't actually believe. I do believe. I must believe. Because the alternative is dying slowly over months while the thing inside me consumes me from within." She squeezed my hands tighter. "I need you to seal me in that wall. 3 days. No more. The anchorites say 3 days is the transformative period. 3 days in absolute darkness. 3 days of silence and isolation. 3 days of dying to the old self so the new self can emerge." "I won't do it. This is madness. If you're ill, we'll find better doctors. We'll travel to London, to the continent." "Will, there is no cure for what I have except this. I know it sounds mad. I know you think I've lost my reason. But I am more clear-headed than I have ever been. This is the only way." She released my hands. "And if you refuse, I will do it myself. I will go into that wall and pull the bricks closed behind me as best I can. But I would rather you did it properly, completely, so I can be certain." I stared at her, searched her face for signs of fever, of delirium, of any explanation that would make this terrible request comprehensible. But I found only certainty, only conviction, only Eleanor, my wife of 5 years, asking me to entomb her alive. 3 days, I said. "You can survive 3 days?" "I have provisions, water, enough for a week if needed. But 3 days should be sufficient. On the morning of the 4th day, you open the wall, and I emerge transformed, healed. And if you don't emerge, if this kills you, then I die doing what I chose rather than dying slowly from what I cannot control. Is that not better? Is that not my right?" Fused, Should have restrained her, should have called the doctors, her family, anyone who might help me prevent this madness. But I did not, because part of me understood. Part of me recognized in Eleanor the desperate logic of someone who has run out of options and is willing to try anything, no matter how impossible, rather than accept inevitable death. And because another part of me, a part I am ashamed to acknowledge, was curious, wanted to see if she was right, wanted to know if 3 days in darkness could truly transform a person, wanted to witness something impossible. "Show me the space," I said. The priest hole was real. Eleanor showed me the entrance, a section of plaster that could be removed to reveal the hollow behind it. The space was approximately 6 feet high, 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep. Barely enough room to stand, certainly not enough to lie down properly. Eleanor had been preparing it for months. Small caches of food, dried meat, bread, biscuits, bottles of water, candles and matches, a blanket, a Bible. 3 days, she said again. Seal me in on November 1st at midnight. Open the wall on November 4th at dawn. That is all I ask. And if I hear you calling, if you change your mind, if you... ignore it. I will panic. Of course I will panic. Anyone sealed in darkness would panic. But I need you to trust that I know what I am doing. Trust that I have thought this through. Trust that this is my choice. Against every instinct, against every fragment of reason I possessed, I agreed. That night at midnight, I helped Eleanor into the space behind the wall. She carried her provisions. She had dressed in a simple white shift. Her feet were bare. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked like a bride or a corpse prepared for burial. 3 days, Marcus, remember. 3 days, I nodded, unable to speak, unable to believe I was actually doing this. Eleanor stepped into the darkness, turned to face me one last time, and I saw something in her expression that I would spend 20 years trying to understand. Not fear, not uncertainty, but anticipation, almost eagerness, as though she could not wait to discover what the darkness held. I replaced the plaster, section. It fit perfectly. She had measured and cut it precisely. Then I began to brick up the entrance, layer by layer, brick by brick, mortar spread thick to seal every gap. Eleanor did not speak while I worked. She stood in the darkness beyond the opening and watched silently as I closed her in. The final brick went into place at 2 a.m. I smoothed the mortar, checked for gaps, found none. The wall was solid, complete, impenetrable. Eleanor was sealed inside. I stood for a long moment, listening, waiting for her to speak, to scream, to beg to be released, but she said nothing, and eventually, exhausted and shaking, I went to bed in the room adjacent to Eleanor's tomb and lay awake until dawn, wondering what I had done. The first day passed in silence. I stayed close to the wall, listening, waiting for Eleanor to call out, to change her mind, to demand release, but no sound came from behind the bricks, no voice, no movement, nothing. By evening, I was frantic, convinced she had died, convinced the shock of confinement had killed her immediately, convinced I was a murderer who had buried his wife alive. I pressed my ear against the wall, listened intently, and finally I heard it. Breathing, slow, steady, rhythmic, the sound of someone alive, someone waiting. I wept with relief. Eleanor lived. The first day was complete. The second day, the screaming began. Not constant, but periodically throughout the day and night, high, desperate, animal. The screams of someone who has realized they are trapped, who understands the weight of stone and brick pressing around them, who wants out and cannot get out and will never get out unless someone releases them. I sat with my back against the wall, listening, suffering, wanting desperately to break through the bricks and free her. But I did not, because she had told me this would happen, had warned me she would panic, had made me promise to ignore it, so I ignored it. Sat there hour after hour while my wife screamed behind the wall, while she begged, while she wept, while she cursed me and called me murderer and pleaded for mercy. I ignored it all, as she had asked me to. The screaming stopped on the evening of the second day. After perhaps 12 hours of intermittent shrieking, Eleanor fell silent. I pressed my ear to the wall again, listened, breathing, still breathing, but slower now, deeper, as though she had exhausted herself, as though she had accepted her confinement. The third day passed in silence. No screaming, no pleading, no sound at all except the faint, barely audible rhythm of breathing. I waited for dawn of the fourth day, the appointed time, the moment when I would open the wall and Eleanor would emerge, transformed or dead, healed or destroyed by her 3 days in darkness. Dawn came, November 4th. I stood before the wall with a hammer and chisel, ready to break through, ready to free her, ready to see what 3 days had wrought. I struck the wall. The mortar crumbled, the bricks loosened, and Eleanor spoke, not screamed, not pleaded, but spoke in a voice that was hers and yet not hers, calmer, deeper, changed in some fundamental way. "Don't," I froze, hammer raised. "Don't open it. Not yet. Not yet." "Eleanor, are you all right?" "Yes. Better than all right. It's working, Marcus. It's working. I can feel it. The thing inside me is changing, dying, transforming. But it needs more time. 3 days is not enough. I need longer." "How much longer?" "I don't know, but I'll know when it's complete. I'll tell you. I'll call out when it's time, but not yet. Please seal it again. Seal it properly. Give me more time." "Eleanor, you can't survive in there much longer. Your provisions..." "I don't need provisions anymore. I don't need food or water. I only need darkness. I only need time. Please, Marcus, please." I should have opened the wall regardless. Should have pulled her out. Should have forced her back into light and air and life. But I did not, because something in her voice convinced me, some quality of certainty that made me believe she truly knew what she was doing, that this was working, that she was achieving whatever impossible transformation she sought. I repaired the mortar, sealed the wall again, left Eleanor in the darkness, and she stayed there. Days became weeks, weeks became months. I kept waiting for Eleanor to call out, to tell me it was time, to ask for a release, but she never did. And I began to hear the breathing, not just when I pressed my ear to the wall, but always, a constant presence, the slow, patient rhythm of someone who has adapted completely to confinement, someone who no longer needs light or space or human contact, someone who exists entirely in darkness. Months became years, 1 year, 2, 5, 10. The breathing continued, never stopped, never changed pace. Just the steady inhalation and exhalation of something, someone who had learned to survive on breath alone. I told people Eleanor had left me, run away with another man, died in a distant city. The stories varied depending on who asked, but no one questioned too closely. Marriages failed, wives disappeared, these things happened, and I remained in the house, sleeping in the room adjacent to the wall. listening to my wife breathe, waiting for her to emerge, waiting for the transformation to complete, waiting for permission to open the wall. 20 years of breathing, 20 years of waiting. And every November when the cold comes and the house settles, the breathing changes, becomes louder, more pronounced, more deliberate, as though Eleanor is trying to communicate something, as though the breathing itself is becoming language. And this November, this 20th anniversary of the night I sealed her in, I finally understand what she has been saying. Thank you. November 1st, 1889, 11:00 p.m. I am writing this in the bedroom, sitting with my back against the wall. Eleanor's breathing is louder tonight than it has ever been. So loud I do not need to press my ear to the bricks to hear it. So loud it fills the room. So loud it drowns out every other sound. The mortar is crumbling. I can see gaps between the bricks. Gaps that were not there yesterday, gaps that widen as I watch. The wall is breaking, not from age, not from settling, but from pressure, from something on the other side pushing against it. Something that has grown strong enough after 20 years to move stone. I have repaired this wall 17 times, filled the gaps, replaced the mortar, kept Eleanor sealed, but I cannot repair it anymore. The gaps appear faster than I can fill them. The bricks shift and settle and crack despite my best efforts. Tonight the wall will break. I know this with certainty. Eleanor will emerge, and I will finally see what 20 years of living burial has created. 11:30 p.m. I can see through the gas now. Not much. Just fragments, suggestions of shape and movement in the darkness beyond. Something pale, something that moves slightly with each breath. Something that is Eleanor but also not Eleanor. Something that has become other through 2 decades of transformation in absolute darkness. The breathing has distinct words now, not voice, but pattern. The inhalation and exhalation forming clear syllables that my mind cannot help but interpret. Thank you for this gift. And I understand, finally, truly understand, what Eleanor meant when she said she needed the darkness. When she said she was dying and this was the only way. She was not dying from disease. She was dying from being human, from being confined in flesh that could not contain what she was becoming, from living in light when she needed darkness to complete her transformation. I gave her that darkness, gave her 20 years of it, gave her the space and time and silence she needed to become whatever she was always meant to become, and she is grateful. Has been trying to thank me for 20 years, has been saying it with every breath, with every slow inhalation and exhalation that sustained her through 2 decades of living burial. 11:45 p.m. The wall is bulging now, bowing outward. The bricks grind against each other. The mortar falls in chalky streams, the gaps widen, until I can see clearly into the space beyond. And I see her, Eleanor, not dead, not decayed, but changed, transformed, evolved into something that should not exist, but does. Her skin is white, not pale, white, the white of bone, of chalk, of things that have never seen sun. It glows faintly in the darkness, phosphorescent, like certain deep-sea creatures, like fungi that grow in caves, like things that have adapted to absolute darkness by creating their own light. Her body is thin, so thin, as though all unnecessary mass has been burned away, leaving only essence, only the minimum required for existence. Her limbs are elongated, her fingers are too long, her spine curves in ways that should not be possible, folding her body into compact shapes, allowing her to occupy the small space efficiently. Her eyes are open, have been open, I realize, for 20 years, staring into darkness, and they have changed. The irises have expanded to fill the entire visible eye. Black, completely black, adapted to see in conditions where no light exists. She is looking at me through the gaps, and she is smiling. Not a human smile. Her mouth opens too wide, shows too many teeth, teeth that have grown sharp and numerous. Teeth for surviving on what little nutrition exists in absolute darkness, but it is a smile nonetheless, an expression of joy, of gratitude, of love for the man who gave her what she needed most. Till 11:55 p.m. The wall cracks. A vertical line splits the bricks from ceiling to floor. The mortar crumbles. The bricks shift. Eleanor pushes. The wall breaks. Bricks tumble forward into the room. Dust fills the air. The plaster splits and falls in chunks, and Eleanor emerges. She unfolds from the space like something that has been compressed for decades and is only now remembering how to expand. Her body uncurls. Her limbs extend. Her spine straightens, or rather, moves through a series of positions that suggest straightness, though the actual shape remains wrong, impossible, beautiful in its wrongness. She stands before me, 7 feet tall, though she was only 5.5 when I sealed her in. Her body has lengthened, stretched, adapted to vertical confinement by growing upward rather than outward. She breathes, the rhythm I have heard for 20 years now visible in the rising and falling of her chest. She breathes and the phosphorescent glow pulses with each breath. She breathes and the room fills with her presence. And she speaks, not with voice. Her throat is too changed for voice, but with breath itself. The pattern of inhalation and exhalation forming words that I hear, not with my ears, but with my mind. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for the darkness. Thank you for the time. Thank you for not opening the wall. Thank you for letting me complete the transformation. Thank you for giving me what I needed. I cannot speak, cannot move, can only stare at what my wife has become. I told you I was dying, and I was, dying to what I was, dying to human form, dying to limitation. I needed the darkness to complete the change, needed confinement, needed absolute isolation so I could focus entirely on becoming. Becoming what? I managed to whisper. Something that does not need light, does not need space, does not need food or water or air beyond the minimum. Something that exists optimally in darkness and confinement. Something that has adapted completely to the only environment that matters. She moves closer. Her movements are fluid, wrong, as though she has forgotten how humans move and invented a new method entirely. I could not have done this without you, without your gift, without your willingness to seal me away, to ignore my screams, to trust that I knew what I needed even when it seemed insane. She reaches out with one elongated hand, touches my face with fingers that are cool and dry and strange. I love you, Marcus. I have loved you throughout, through every breath, through every moment in the darkness. You gave me exactly what I asked for. You did not fail me. You did not open the wall too soon. You did not interfere. You are perfect. I am crying, not from horror, from relief, from the overwhelming understanding that Eleanor is not angry, is not vengeful, is grateful, loves me, thanks me for what I did. What happens now, I ask. Now I return, the darkness was transformative, but it is not where I wish to remain. I have adapted to survive there, but I can adapt to survive here as well, with time, with patience, with your help. You want to stay here with me? I want to live, Marcus. I want to exist in the world, but differently than before, as what I have become, and I want you beside me, teaching me how to be this new thing in a world that was not made for it. She smiles again, that wrong, impossible smile that should terrify me but does not, because this is Eleanor, changed, transformed, evolved, but still Eleanor, still my wife, still the woman who trusted me with the most impossible request imaginable and who I did not fail. Yes, I say. Yes, stay. We'll figure it out, together. She pulls me close. Her body is cold but not unpleasant. Different but not wrong, changed but still recognizably the person I married 20 years ago. We stand together in the bedroom, the wall broken, the Duckians released, Eleanor free, and for the first time in 20 years, I do not hear the breathing from behind the wall, because Eleanor is here, out, transformed, completed, and we are together again. Editor's note. This confession was discovered on November 15th, 1889 in the Ashcroft residence. Marcus Ashcroft and a woman believed to be Eleanor Ashcroft were found dead in the bedroom, though the circumstances defy conventional explanation. The east wall of the bedroom had collapsed inward. Behind it, investigators found a space approximately 6 feet high, 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep. An old priest hole dating to the 16th century. The space showed evidence of long-term occupation, empty water bottles, food remnants, dated and dried beyond recognition, candle stubs, human waste in one corner. But the bodies are what complicate the official account. Marcus Ashcroft died of heart failure, natural causes according to the physician. He was found lying peacefully on the bed, as though he had died in his sleep. The woman, officially identified as Eleanor Ashcroft despite significant problems with this identification, died simultaneously, also heart failure. She lay beside Marcus on the bed. The problems with identification. Eleanor Ashcroft was reported missing in 1869. Marcus claimed she had left him. No body was ever found. The case remained open but inactive. The woman found dead at home in 1889 was listed in records as approximately 52 years old, Eleanor's age if she had lived. But the body showed unusual characteristics. Extreme emaciation. The woman weighed perhaps 85 pounds. Her bones showed signs of unusual growth, elongation beyond normal human proportion. Her spine exhibited curvature impossible in standard human anatomy, suggesting extreme flexibility or malformation. The skin was abnormally pale, not from recent death but from long-term absence of sunlight. Pigmentation had been completely lost. The eyes showed the most dramatic abnormality. The irises had expanded beyond normal size, nearly filling the visible eye. Examination suggested adaptation for vision in extremely low light conditions, one ophthalmologist noted. I have seen similar adaptations in cave-dwelling species, never in humans. The teeth were numerous and sharp, more teeth than standard human dentition. Growth patterns suggested they had developed over time rather than being present from birth. DNA testing, performed in 1970 during a cold case review, confirmed the woman was Eleanor Ashcroft. But the physical changes remained unexplained. Most disturbing, the wall showed evidence of being broken from within. Bricks displaced outward, mortar pushed out rather than pulled out. as though something inside the space had pushed through with considerable force. The space behind the wall contained deep scratches on all surfaces. Some appeared to be fingernail marks, but others suggested different implements or different appendages. The patterns did not match human hand anatomy. Oxygen analysis of the sealed space concluded that no human could have survived more than 3 days in such confinement without suffocating. Yet the evidence suggested someone had occupied the space for years, perhaps decades. One theory, Eleanor Ashcroft was sealed in the wall in 1869, somehow survived in extreme conditions, adapted physiologically to confinement and darkness, and emerged in 1889. The adaptation would explain the physical abnormalities. The length of confinement would explain the unusual wear patterns and the extensive physiological changes. But this theory requires accepting that a human being survived 20 years in a space with minimal air, no light, and inadequate nutrition, which is physiologically impossible. The alternative theory, that Eleanor died in 1869 and Marcus suffered elaborate delusions, perhaps sealing a different woman or no one in the wall and imagining the breathing, does not explain the body, does not explain the DNA match, does not explain the physiological adaptations. Marcus's journals found in his study document 20 years of hearing breathing from the wall. The entries are consistent, detailed, and show no signs of progressive delusion or deteriorating mental state. He writes clearly and rationally about an impossible circumstance. One psychiatrist in 1925 wrote, "If the journals are genuine, Marcus Ashcroft experienced something real but unexplainable. If they are fabrications, they represent the most elaborate and sustained delusion in medical literature. Neither explanation is satisfying." One final detail. The neighbours reported sounds from the Ashcroft house in the weeks before the deaths. Not screaming, not violence, but breathing. Audible from outside, heavy, rhythmic, like something large inhaling and exhaling with tremendous effort. When asked to describe it, one neighbour said, "It sounded like the house itself was breathing." As though something had been sleeping inside the walls and was waking up. The Ashcroft house was demolished in 1892. During demolition, workers reported finding additional spaces between the walls, empty spaces that should not have existed in the original architecture, spaces large enough for a person to occupy, and in each space scratches, deep gouges in the wood and plaster, patterns that suggested hands, or something like hands, had been exploring the walls from inside, testing, searching, preparing, as though Eleanor had not been confined to one space, as though she'd been moving through the walls of the house, as though the entire structure had become her habitat, her adapted environment, her home in darkness. And if that is true, if Eleanor truly learned to live in the spaces between rooms, in the hollows behind plaster, in the gaps between floors, then the question becomes, what happened to her after Marcus died? Did she die with him, her heart stopping when his stopped? Or did she survive? Did she return to the walls? Did she find new spaces, new darkness, new places to continue existing as whatever she had become? There have been no confirmed sightings, but in old houses in the area, residents sometimes report sounds, breathing sounds, coming from inside the walls, heavy, slow, patient, the breathing of something that has learned to wait, to survive on darkness alone, to exist in spaces too small for human life. And sometimes, rarely but consistently, people report glimpsing something pale moving behind the walls, something that should not fit in those narrow spaces, something that has adapted to confinement so completely it prefers it to open air. The walls remember, even if we cannot accept what they remember.